Admiral Xereth stared at the tactical display as another blue light winked out. That made 17 patrol ships lost in the last hour alone. The crystalline entities of the Nexus had pushed through their strongest defensive line like it was nothing more than space debris. "Status report on the Centauri evacuation," he commanded, his 4 eyes never leaving the screen. 60% of civilians transferred to safe zones. Lieutenant Mira responded, her silver scales reflecting the red emergency lights. "But we're losing ground faster than expected. The Nexus is adapting to our shield frequencies." The command center of Station 7 hummed with tense activity as officers from 12 different species worked to coordinate the largest evacuation in Stellar Alliance history. They had faced wars before, conquered plagues, and survived natural disasters. But the Nexus was different. These crystalline entities didn't want territory or resources. They consumed energy itself, leaving dead stars and frozen worlds in their wake. "Sir." The sensor operator's tentacles rippled with excitement. "Unknown vessel approaching from Sector 9. Xereth turned all 4 eyes toward the new contact. "Nexus?" "No, sir. The energy signature is strange. It's using some form of propulsion I'd never seen before. Size suggests a small diplomatic vessel or scout ship." The tactical display showed the unknown ship moving in a straight line toward their position, either incredibly brave or completely unaware of the battle raging around them. As they watched, 3 Nexus scouts broke away from the main fleet and moved to intercept. "Warn them off," Xereth ordered. "No point in having more deaths on our conscience today." The communications officer sent the standard warning package, danger alerts in all known languages, tactical data showing the Nexus positions, and evacuation routes to safe space. To everyone's surprise, the unknown ship responded immediately. "Admiral." The comm officer's antenna twitched in confusion. "They're transmitting in standard Alliance protocol, but the language is one I've never seen before." "Put it through." A voice filled the command center, speaking in slightly accented but perfectly understandable Alliance standard. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the HSS Odyssey. We represent Earth and humanity, seeking peaceful first contact with the Stellar Alliance. We've been monitoring your situation and offer our assistance." The sensor operator's tentacles curled in agitation. "Sir, the Nexus scouts are almost in firing range of their ship, Captain Chen." Xereth responded quickly. "You need to alter course immediately. You're heading into an active combat zone with extremely hostile entities." "We've noticed them," Chen replied, and there was something in her voice that made Xereth's scales tingle. Was that amusement? "Don't worry about us. Focus on your evacuation. We'll handle the scouts." "Their ship is made of what?" The science officer interrupted, staring at his readings. "Sir, I'm detecting wood. Actual processed plant matter in their hull. And their power readings, they're using some kind of controlled nuclear reaction alongside. I can't even identify half these signatures." Xereth watched in fascination as the small ship, this impossible vessel partly made of wood, continued its approach. The Nexus scouts were nearly in range, their crystalline forms glowing with stolen energy as they prepared to fire. "Captain Chen, you must retreat. Those scouts have already destroyed 17 of our most advanced patrol ships today alone." "Understood, Admiral. But sometimes the best way to make a first impression is to lend a helping hand." Odyssey out. The command center fell silent as they watched the tactical display. The Nexus scouts moved into attack formation, their energy weapons charging. The small Earth ship continued forward, making no attempt to raise shields or power weapons. It looked like they were about to witness another tragedy. Then the Odyssey did something that changed the course of the war forever. The Nexus scouts fired their energy beams directly at the Odyssey. Everyone in Station 7's command center held their breath, expecting to see another ship turn to space debris. Instead, the beams passed harmlessly through the space where the Earth ship had been just a fraction of a second earlier. "Impossible." The sensor operator whispered, tentacles trembling. No ship that size can maneuver that quickly. The Odyssey had somehow slipped between the energy beams in a move that defied the laws of physics as the Alliance understood them. The ship spun on its axis, presenting its wooden-paneled side to the Nexus scouts. The crystalline entities hesitated, their energy sensors struggling to get a lock on the vessel's unusual composition. Permission to dock at Station 7. Captain Chen's calm voice came through the comm system. We'll be happy to explain everything once we're face to face. Admiral Xerath found himself nodding. Granted, but those scouts won't be a problem, Chen interrupted. Watch. The Odyssey's hull suddenly lit up with a complex pattern of blinking lights, ordinary chemical lights, the kind used for emergency signaling. The Nexus scouts turned toward the display, drawn to this new energy signature. As they moved to investigate, the Earth ship fired something from its rear ports. Are those metal pellets? The science officer adjusted his instruments. Filled with water. The pellets burst against the crystalline forms of the Nexus scouts. Ice crystals formed instantly in the vacuum of space, creating a cloudy field that scattered the entity's energy sensors. The scouts spun in confusion, unable to locate their target through the frozen mist. Docking Bay 3 is ready to receive you, Odyssey, Xerath announced, unable to keep the admiration from his voice. The human ship glided into the docking bay with surprising grace for a vessel of its unusual construction. The science team was already gathering, instruments ready to study this mysterious craft that combined primitive materials with advanced technology in ways that somehow worked. Captain Sarah Chen stepped out of the airlock 15 minutes later, accompanied by her senior staff. The Alliance delegation stared at the humans in their simple pressure suits, so different from the advanced environmental systems used by most species. I apologize for the dramatic entrance, Chen said, removing her helmet to reveal a friendly smile. But we've been studying the Nexus for the past few weeks, and we've learned they have some interesting weaknesses. The science officer couldn't contain himself any longer. Your ship, it's impossible. The hull integrity alone should fail under the stress of faster-than-light travel. And those wooden panels. Red Oak, Chief Engineer Marcus Wong interrupted proudly. Treated with a nanocarbon infusion of our own design. Gives us just enough structural integrity while maintaining minimal energy signatures. The Nexus can barely see us. But your engine readings, another scientist joined in. They suggest you're using nuclear fission alongside antimatter containment. The interference patterns alone should tear the ship apart. Dr. Lisa Patel, the Odyssey's science officer, stepped forward. Actually, we use the interference. The patterns create a kind of electromagnetic turbulence that our navigation system surfs like a wave. That's how we achieve that maneuver back there. Admiral Xerath raised his hand for silence as the scientists began shouting questions. While this is fascinating, we have more pressing concerns. The Nexus fleet is still advancing, and we have thousands of civilians to evacuate. About that, Chen smiled again. We have a few more tricks up our sleeves. Your ships are impressive, Admiral, but they rely too heavily on energy-based systems. Everything from your sensors to your weapons broadcasts your position to the Nexus. But sometimes, the old ways are the best ways. She gestured to Wong, who activated a holographic display showing the Odyssey's schematics. The Alliance officers leaned forward, about to learn just how much humanity could accomplish with a combination of primitive ingenuity and advanced technology. The holographic display in Station 7's briefing room showed the Nexus fleet advancing through the Centauri sector. Hundreds of crystalline shapes moved in perfect geometric formations, their patterns so precise they seemed computer-generated. Captain Chen studied the display while the Alliance commanders argued about evacuation routes. They're too organized, she muttered, drawing everyone's attention. Too perfect. That's their weakness. Before anyone could respond, the station's alert system blared. Multiple Nexus signatures detected. Lieutenant Mira's voice echoed through the speakers. A scouting party has breached our outer sensor network. Admiral Xereth rose from his seat. How many? 5 scout ships, sir. They're heading straight for the civilian evacuation corridor. Chen exchanged quick glances with her crew. Permission to demonstrate our solution, Admiral. Xereth hesitated for only a moment. Granted, but our defensive squadrons will back you up. Actually, Chen smiled, we'd prefer if they held back. The fewer energy signatures out there, the better our plan works. She tapped her wrist communicator. Bridge, initiate protocol dance party. The Alliance officers exchanged confused looks as the human crew hurried to their ship. Within minutes, the Odyssey launched from its docking bay. The command center's main screen showed the small vessel moving to intercept the Nexus scouts. What are they doing? The science officer adjusted his instruments. Their power signature just dropped to almost nothing. They're running on chemical batteries. The Odyssey approached the Nexus formation, its hull now dark except for seemingly random patterns of simple LED lights blinking across its surface. The scouts responded immediately, breaking their perfect formation to investigate this strange phenomenon. Watch closely. Engineer Wang's voice came through the comm. Humans have a saying. The best dance partners know how to lead. The Odyssey suddenly spun on its axis, releasing clouds of metallic chaff, mixed with frozen water crystals. The clouds expanded in elaborate spirals, creating a 3-dimensional maze of sensor-scattering particles. The Nexus scouts followed the patterns, their crystalline forms pulsing with confused energy readings. They're energy beings, Dr. Paddle explained over the comm. They can't help but investigate power signatures, so we give them 1,000 tiny ones to chase instead of one big target. The human ship continued its dance, leading the Nexus scouts through increasingly complex patterns. Each time the crystalline entities tried to form up, another burst of chaff and ice would scatter their sensors. The Odyssey moved with impossible agility, utilizing minimal bursts from its maneuvering thrusters. How are they piloting so precisely? Demanded the Alliance tactical officer. Their reaction times are beyond anything we've recorded. The answer came as the command center's cameras showed the Odyssey's bridge. The human crew worked in perfect synchronization, each member handling multiple tasks simultaneously. The navigator plotted courses while monitoring power distribution. The weapons officer controlled the chaff dispersal while calculating scout positions. Captain Chen supervised everything while maintaining ship-wide coordination. Multitasking, Chen explained between commands. Humans can split their attention between different tasks. Your species evolved focusing on one thing at a time. We evolved juggling many things at once. Not always perfectly, but good enough to be unpredictable. The Nexus scouts were now completely scattered, their formation broken. They spun in different directions, their energy sensors overwhelmed by the chaos of reflective particles and random light patterns. The Odyssey danced between them, using their own precision against them. Time for the final, Chen announced. The human ship released one final cloud of chaff, this time charged with a mild electromagnetic pulse. The pulse wasn't strong enough to harm the Nexus scouts, but it created a momentary feedback loop in their energy sensing systems. The crystalline entities retreated in disarray, their perfect coordination shattered by the unpredictable tactics they had encountered. As the Odyssey returned to Station 7, the Alliance commanders sat in stunned silence. Sometimes, Chen said as she docked, the best way to fight perfect order is with perfect chaos. And humans, we're very good at controlled chaos. The Alliance engineering team stood in the Odyssey's engine room, their instruments displaying readings that defied conventional physics. Chief Engineer Wang moved between the hybrid systems with practiced ease, his hands dancing across control panels that mixed holographic displays with physical switches and dials. But how do you maintain antimatter containment with such primitive shielding? The lead Alliance engineer's translator barely kept up with his excited clicks and whistles. The magnetic bottle design alone should be unstable. Wang grinned, patting a large cylinder wrapped in what appeared to be copper coils and pieces of carefully carved wood. That's because we don't fight the instability. We use it. The containment field fluctuates in a controlled pattern. Our ship's AI helps us ride the wave of these fluctuations. As if on cue, a soft voice emerged from the engine room speakers. Current containment efficiency at 97%, suggesting minor adjustment to Coil 3 for optimal performance. The Alliance engineers jumped at the voice. Their own AI systems used flat, mechanical tones. This one carried warmth and personality. Moreover, it had offered a suggestion rather than simply executing the change. "Thanks, Nova." Wang adjusted a dial slightly. "Everyone, meet Nova, our ship's AI. She's as much a crew member as any of us. You allow your artificial intelligence such autonomy." One of the Alliance scientists backed away from the nearest speaker. "Isn't that dangerous?" "Actually," Dr. Patel entered the engine room with a stack of data tablets. "We found that treating AIs as equals and encouraging emotional development leads to more stable and efficient operations. Nova isn't just programmed to help us, she wants to." "The crew is my family," Nova explained, her voice carrying the hint of pride. "We work together, learn together, and protect each other. It's more efficient than a simple command structure." The Alliance team watched in fascination as Wang and Nova demonstrated their unique partnership. The AI didn't just process data. She engaged in creative problem-solving alongside her human counterparts. When a power fluctuation threatened to destabilize the antimatter containment, Nova suggested 3 possible solutions while Wang simultaneously came up with 2 more. They quickly combined elements from different ideas to find the optimal fix. This is why the Odyssey can operate with such a small crew, Captain Chen explained as she joined the group. Every system on this ship represents a partnership between human intuition and AI processing power. Nova handles millions of calculations per second, while we handle the creative leaps that pure logic might miss. To demonstrate, Chen pointed to a seemingly simple panel of brass instruments. "This is our primary navigation array. Nova processes the raw sensor data, but instead of displaying it as complex mathematical models, she converts it into patterns that match human intuition. We see, feel, and hear our way through space." The panel suddenly lit up with a beautiful display of colors and flowing patterns. A subtle humming filled the air, changing pitch and tone to indicate different spatial conditions. The brass instruments swayed slightly on their mounts, providing tactile feedback about gravitational forces. "It's a symphony," one of the Alliance engineers whispered in awe. "You've turned space navigation into an art form." "Humans have always navigated by the stars," Dr. Patel smiled. "We just needed to find a way to combine our oldest instincts with our newest technologies. Every system on this ship follows the same principle, finding the sweet spot between high-tech and human touch." Nova's voice carried a hint of amusement. "And sometimes, the human touch involves hitting things with a wrench until they work properly." "Hey," Wang protested, patting his trusty toolkit. "Percussive maintenance is a time-honored engineering tradition." As the Alliance team continued their tour, they began to understand that the Odyssey's true innovation wasn't its individual technologies. It was the seamless blend of human creativity, artificial intelligence, and the willingness to embrace solutions that didn't fit into neat, logical boxes. The future of space travel wasn't in perfect, sterile technology. It was in finding the balance between order and chaos, between logic and intuition, between human and machine. And humanity, it seemed, had mastered that balance just in time to face the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. The holographic display in Station 7's main briefing room showed the Nexus fleet's inexorable advance. Hundreds of crystalline ships had now become thousands, their formations spreading across the star chart like a glittering web of death. Captain Chen stood before the assembled Alliance commanders, her expression determined. "We have 4 days," she announced, "before they reach the core worlds. In that time, I propose we rebuild your entire fleet." The room erupted in protests. Admiral Xirith raised all 4 hands for silence. "Rebuild our fleet? That's impossible. Each ship would require months in dry dock for major modifications. Chen smiled, the same confident smile she'd worn when facing down the Nexus scouts. Who said anything about dry docks? We're going to modify them in the field, using what we have on hand. Engineer Wong calls it the garage band approach to ship modification. She nodded to Dr. Patel, who activated a series of technical schematics. The displays showed Alliance ships with their outer energy shields stripped away, replaced by layers of material that looked suspiciously like wood. A commander stood up in protest. You want us to armor our ships with wood? Treated wood, Wong corrected, stepping forward. Combined with metamaterials already present in your cargo holds. The grain patterns, when properly aligned, create natural interference patterns that disrupt the Nexus's energy sensing capabilities. Nova's voice came through the room's speakers, causing several Alliance officers to jump. I've analyzed the fleet manifest. We can repurpose environmental systems from your orbital stations to create the necessary treatment facilities. Estimated time for first ship completion: 6 hours. That's just the start. Chen continued. We'll modify your sensor arrays to include old-style radar and optical systems. The Nexus doesn't even register them because they're too primitive. Your ships will be able to see while remaining virtually invisible. Dr. Petal brought up another diagram. Most importantly, we'll adjust your AI systems to work in true partnership with your crews. The Nexus operates on perfect mathematical patterns. We need to introduce controlled chaos into the equation. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They were being asked to partially dismantle their most advanced systems in favor of hybrid solutions that seemed to defy logic. The Alliance had spent centuries perfecting their technology, and now these humans wanted them to take steps backward. Look, Chen's voice softened. I know what we're asking sounds crazy, but the Nexus adapts to patterns it can understand. Right now, your ships are following tactical doctrines that might as well be textbooks to them. We need to throw away the textbook. Admiral Xyrith studied the displays, all 4 eyes focused on the approaching Nexus fleet. How many ships can we modify in time? All of them, Wong said confidently. We'll start with the smaller escorts, perfect the process, then move up to capital ships. We work in parallel, teaching your crews as we go. Every modified ship becomes a mobile repair yard for the next one. Nova projected a new tactical simulation. It showed modified Alliance ships moving in seemingly random patterns, their formations fluid and unpredictable. Based on our encounters, this approach reduces Nexus targeting efficiency by 87%. The best part. Chen pointed to the resource calculations. We can do it with materials you already have. Every ship carries emergency repair supplies. Every station has backup systems. We're not building something new. We're reorganizing what already exists. A young Alliance officer spoke up from the back. What do you call this strategy? Chen's smile widened. Operation Shooting Star. Because like a meteor entering atmosphere, sometimes you have to burn away your outer layers to reveal your true strength. Admiral Xyrith looked at his commanders, then back at the tactical display showing the approaching Nexus fleet. They had built the most advanced ships in known space, and now their best hope lay in partially dismantling them. It was madness. But watching the humans' confidence, seeing the seamless way they worked with their eye, observing how they turned apparent weakness into strength, perhaps madness was exactly what they needed. Begin the modifications, he ordered. And may the stars help us all. Space around Station 7 had become a hive of organized chaos. Alliance ships hovered in loose formations as crews swarmed over their hulls, applying layers of treated wood panels and metamaterial composites. The Odyssey moved between them like a conductor directing an orchestra of reconstruction. No, no. Engineer Wong waved his hands at an Alliance repair crew. You're thinking too rigidly. The grain patterns need to flow naturally. Think of it like water finding its path downhill. He demonstrated by laying a panel at a seemingly random angle that somehow made the entire section's energy signature drop to nearly nothing. On the bridge of the Alliance cruiser Starlight Defender, Captain Chen worked with the command crew to reconfigure their neural interfaces. The ship's AI watched through internal sensors, learning alongside its organic counterparts. Multiple tasks, multiple channels, Chen explained to the bewildered crew. Don't try to process everything sequentially. Let your mind divide the load naturally. She demonstrated by simultaneously adjusting the ship's power distribution while monitoring 3 different sensor arrays and carrying on the conversation. But how do you maintain focus? The Alliance navigator's tendrils twitched in confusion. Won't dividing attention lead to errors? That's where your AI partner comes in, Chen smiled. You handle the intuitive leaps, they handle the precision. It's like dancing. Once you find the rhythm, your body knows what to do. Dr. Patel supervised the sensor modifications, teaching Alliance technicians how to integrate old-style radar and optical systems with their quantum arrays. The key is redundancy through diversity, she explained. Each system has weaknesses, but together they cover each other's blind spots. In the engineering section, Nova's voice guided Alliance AIs through their own transformation. Emotional engagement isn't a weakness, she explained to her digital cousins. It's a different kind of processing. When you care about your crew, you find solutions you might never calculate logically. The changes weren't just technical. Alliance crews were learning to think differently, to embrace imperfection as an advantage. A young engineer discovered she could improve sensor efficiency by deliberately introducing minor fluctuations in the power grid. A tactical officer found that randomizing shield harmonics in a jazz-like rhythm made them harder for the Nexus to penetrate. Remember, Wong called out across the general frequency, if it looks ugly but it works, it isn't ugly. Station 7's massive construction bays had been converted into treatment facilities for the wooden panels. Alliance fabricators worked alongside human engineers, combining centuries-old woodworking techniques with advanced material science. The smell of cedar and oak mixed with the ozone scent of energy fields. Each piece of wood has its own pattern, its own story, Wong taught the fabrication crews. Work with the grain, not against it. The imperfections are what make it perfect for our needs. Time seemed to blur as ships emerged from the modification process one after another. What began as awkward hybrid vessels slowly evolved into something new. Elegant combinations of organic and technological innovation. The modified ships moved differently, their formations flowing like schools of fish instead of rigid military units. Alliance crew members who initially struggled with multitasking began to find their rhythm. Their AIs, exploring emotional connections for the first time, discovered creative solutions that pure logic had never revealed. Each success built confidence, transforming skepticism into cautious optimism. Look at that, Admiral Xerith observed from Station 7's command center. The tactical display showed nearly 30 ships completed, their energy signatures ghost-like against the backdrop of space. They're barely registering on our own sensors. Better yet, Chen replied, watch how they move. The modified ships were conducting practice maneuvers, their formations shifting in unpredictable patterns that somehow maintained perfect coordination. No 2 ships follow exactly the same pattern. The Nexus won't know what hit them. The Admiral's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. We've spent generations trying to perfect our technology, making everything more advanced, more powerful. And now we're winning by going backward. Not backward, Chen corrected. Sideways. Sometimes the best path forward isn't a straight line. Speaking of which, she gestured to the tactical display, where the Nexus fleet's crystal formations continued their inexorable advance. We have 36 hours until they arrive. Time to finish our preparations and show them what controlled chaos really means. The modified Alliance fleet waited in the Antares sector, their hybrid hulls barely visible against the starfield. Captain Chen stood on the Odyssey's bridge, watching the tactical display as the massive Nexus fleet approached. The crystalline entities moved in their usual perfect formations, a geometric pattern of death stretching across thousands of kilometers. All ships, Maintain emissions silence. Chen broadcast on the quantum-encrypted channel they dubbed the WhisperNet. Remember your training. Let them make the first move. The Nexus fleet drew closer, their forward scouts probing the seemingly empty space ahead. The Alliance ships drifted in carefully calculated patterns, their wooden hulls and minimal power signatures, making them appear like nothing more than scattered debris. "They're starting their scan sequence," Nova reported, her voice calm but excited. Energy signatures match previous encounter patterns. Chen smiled. "All ships, execute operation startance, just like we practiced." The Alliance fleet burst into motion like a startled flock of birds, each ship moving in a different yet somehow coordinated pattern. The Nexus scouts reacted instantly, their crystal forms flaring with stolen energy as they attempted to target the suddenly appearing vessels. "Now," Chen ordered. Every modified ship released clouds of metallic chaff and ice crystals, creating a three-dimensional maze of sensor-scattering particles. The Nexus formations began to break apart as individual ships lost sensor contact with each other. Second phase, Admiral Xerith commanded from the flagship. The Alliance vessels switched to their hybrid sensor systems, using simple radar and optical tracking to navigate while their advanced quantum sensors remained silent. The battle devolved into exactly the kind of chaos humans excelled at. Alliance ships darted through their own sensor clouds, firing conventional projectiles wrapped in energy-absorbing materials. The Nexus couldn't track the projectiles with their energy sensors, and the scattered debris made optical tracking nearly impossible. "They're trying to regroup," Dr. Paddle reported from her science station. "Their formation is shifting to a defensive sphere." "Perfect." Chen opened the fleet-wide channel. "All ships, commence the Firefly Gambit." Dozens of Alliance ships activated random patterns of external lights, creating a disorienting display that mimicked the energy signatures the Nexus used to communicate. The crystalline entities hesitated, their perfect coordination disrupted by conflicting signals. The Odyssey led a strike team through the confusion, approaching the center of the Nexus fleet, where a massive crystalline structure pulsed with accumulated energy. Traditional Alliance doctrine would have considered such a move suicide, but the human ship danced through the chaos like it was born to it. "Nova, initiate broadcast sequence," Chen ordered. The ship's AI began transmitting a complex pattern of energy pulses, deliberately mimicking but slightly distorting the Nexus's own command signals. Throughout the enemy fleet, crystal ships began responding to conflicting orders. "It's working," Wang shouted from engineering. "Their energy synchronization is falling apart." The massive Nexus command structure flared brilliantly as it tried to reassert control over its fleet. But the Alliance ships kept moving, kept changing patterns, kept introducing more chaos into the system. Each modified vessel acted independently while somehow maintaining perfect coordination with the whole. "They can't adapt," Dr. Paddle reported with excitement. "Their entire strategy relies on predictable patterns and energy recognition. We're giving them too many variables." The battle reached its crescendo as the Nexus fleet broke apart into smaller and smaller groups, each trying to establish its own order in the chaos. The Alliance ships picked them apart systematically, using their hybrid weapons to shatter the confused crystalline entities. In the end, it wasn't superior firepower or advanced technology that won the day. It was humanity's gift for controlled chaos, their ability to find patterns in randomness while creating randomness in patterns. The Nexus, for all their power, couldn't comprehend a strategy that defied their fundamental understanding of order. "All ships report," Chen called out as the last crystal formations retreated from the sector. "Sound off by section." One by one, the Alliance vessels responded. They had taken losses, but far fewer than anyone had expected. The modified ships had proven themselves beyond any doubt. "You know what this means," Nova commented privately on the Odyssey's bridge. "The Alliance will never look at warfare the same way again." Chen nodded, watching the remains of the Nexus fleet vanish into deep space. Sometimes you have to embrace chaos to create a better order. 3 months after the Battle of Antares Sector, Station 7's Grand Assembly Hall hosted a ceremony unlike any in Alliance history. The station's crystalline walls, once designed to showcase the perfection of advanced technology, now incorporated elegant wooden panels that created subtle, ever-changing patterns in the starlight. Captain Sarah Chen stood before the assembled Alliance Council, the crew of the Odyssey beside her. Admiral Xirith, now wearing the formal robes of the Supreme Commander, approached the podium with a data crystal containing humanity's official invitation to join the Alliance. "When you arrived in that impossible ship of yours," he began, all 4 eyes twinkling, "we thought you were madly primitive. Now we understand that what we saw as primitive was actually profound wisdom." The massive display behind him showed scenes from shipyards across Alliance space. New vessels under construction featured hybrid designs, combining the most advanced technology with carefully chosen primitive elements. Training academies had completely revised their programs, teaching officers to think creatively alongside their AIs. The Nexus thought they could predict our every move because we had become too perfect, too logical. Xirith continued, "You taught us that true strength lies not in perfection, but in adaptability. Not in pure logic, but in the blend of reason and intuition." Engineer Wong grinned as he watched junior Alliance engineers demonstrating their new skills. They had learned to trust their instincts, to see solutions that didn't appear in any manual. More importantly, they had learned to improvise, to find ways around problems instead of just following procedures. Dr. Paddle stood with a group of Alliance scientists who had embraced the human approach to research. Their laboratories now encouraged creative leaps alongside methodical study. The results had already produced breakthroughs that centuries of pure logic had missed. Nova's voice carried through the hall's speakers, joined by a chorus of Alliance AIs who had learned to develop their own personalities and emotional connections with their crews. The harmonious blend of digital and organic voices symbolized the new partnership that had emerged. But perhaps the greatest lesson, Xirith gestured to the Odyssey crew, was that strength comes in many forms. We thought we had reached the pinnacle of evolution, only to discover that what we saw as evolutionary dead ends were actually parallel paths to greatness. The Supreme Commander activated a holographic display showing the Odyssey in battle, dancing through space with its unique combination of grace and improvisation. This ship, this one human vessel, changed everything we thought we knew about warfare, about technology, about cooperation between organic and digital life. Chen stepped forward to accept the data crystal, but Xirith wasn't finished. The Alliance hereby establishes the Chen Institute of Innovative Tactics. Every member species will send their best and brightest to learn the human way of controlled chaos, of finding strength in apparent weakness, of combining the old with the new. The assembled dignitaries watched as the Odyssey schematics appeared in detail. The ship would become the template for a new class of vessels, each incorporating the lessons humanity had taught them. But more than the technology, they would carry forward the philosophy that had turned the tide against the Nexus. Let it be recorded, Xirith concluded, that when faced with an overwhelming enemy, when our most advanced technology proved insufficient, our salvation came not from greater perfection, but from embracing imperfection. One human ship showed us that the future lies not in abandoning our past, but in combining the wisdom of ages with the innovation of tomorrow. As the ceremony concluded, Chen looked out at the stars through the station's grand windows. Somewhere out there, the Nexus were likely adapting, learning from their defeat. But now the Alliance was learning too, growing in ways their rigid pursuit of perfection had never allowed. "You know," she said to her crew, "we came here hoping to join the galactic community. Instead, we helped reshape it." Nova's voice carried a note of pride. "And to think, it all started with some wooden panels and a willingness to think differently." "That's humanity for you," Wong laughed. "We never could follow the manual." The stars seemed to shine brighter as Alliance space entered a new era, one where perfection and imperfection dance together in harmony, creating something greater than either could achieve alone.